Have you ever noticed the sheer amount of psychological energy you spend every day trying to ensure your existence doesn't inconvenience anyone? If you are at a restaurant and your order is completely wrong, you will likely just eat it in silence rather than complain. When overwhelmed with personal responsibilities, the idea of reaching out and asking someone for help feels physically impossible, almost like a structural failure. Younger generations view this intense self-reliance as a stubborn refusal to be vulnerable, assuming you simply cannot communicate your basic emotional needs. But the reality is far more complex. As a Generation X adult, your psychological framework was built on the rule of not bothering anyone. Society loves to label your generation as fiercely independent, treating your quiet resilience as an accidental byproduct of a culturally sarcastic era. So when you express deep exhaustion from managing everything alone, the modern advice is usually to set boundaries or practice vocal self-care. People do not understand that being completely self-contained was not a wellness choice. It was the baseline requirement for survival in an unsupervised world. This misunderstanding leaves you feeling profoundly isolated, secretly wondering why taking up space or asking for a small favor makes you feel incredibly guilty. Your intense reluctance to rely on others is not a lack of communication skills. It is the physical imprint of an era that ignored you. For children born between the mid-60s and early 80s, childhood was defined by a lack of adult supervision and a demand for quiet compliance. You were the latchkey generation growing up in a society where both parents worked, and the ultimate measure of a good kid was invisibility. You quickly internalized an unspoken contract as long as you did not create a problem or bother the adults you were allowed to exist. This was not just about cooking dinner alone. It was profound emotional conditioning that taught you your feelings were your own solitary responsibility. Therefore, when you feel anxiety today about asking a friend for a ride, your nervous system is simply running the old survival code. Psychologists study how early environments defined by high autonomy create adult profiles marked by intense self-monitoring and a profound fear of being a burden. According to Pew Research Center, Generation X is uniquely characterized by a deep-seated skepticism of institutions and a reliance on extreme, quiet individualism. Sociological studies show that latchkey children developed advanced logistical competence entirely as a defense mechanism against feeling profoundly emotionally overlooked by society. When your formative years required navigating an empty house in silence, your brain associated personal safety with absolute emotional and physical invisibility. Your mind built an internal alarm system that immediately flags any request for help as a dangerous violation of the core survival rule. This self-policing creates a bizarre paradox. You are incredibly capable of solving crises for others, but completely paralyzed by the thought of needing them. Additionally, people who grew up under this mandate developed a remarkable capacity to silently absorb an enormous amount of physical and emotional discomfort. While modern culture encourages openly broadcasting struggles, your instinct is to immediately swallow your pain so it does not accidentally spill onto someone else. This fundamental drive to be self-sufficient makes you an incredibly reliable friend, but often leaves you feeling completely drained and unsupported in life. You are operating on a psychological model of continuous, silent endurance, prioritizing the comfort of the room over your own need to exhale. You can actually feel this deeply wired reluctance in your physical body whenever a situation forces you to admit you cannot handle everything alone. It feels like a sudden tight knot in your throat when you even consider picking up the phone to ask a friend for a favor. Your nervous system reacts to the vulnerability of needing someone as if it is a genuine physical threat bracing against the expected disappointment. Imagine the sensation of carrying a massive heavy backpack but being absolutely terrified to let anyone else even touch the straps to help. It is not that you do not want support. Your biological system is flooded with anxiety at the mere thought of making your needs visible. When you see other people effortlessly taking up space or demanding accommodations, you might feel a sudden spike of intense resentment and confusion. Your body physically tenses up, reacting to their casual display of neediness because it violates the strict silent code your childhood brain adopted. Even simple things like returning a defective product to a store can trigger intense guilt, echoing times you had to accept whatever was given. Research confirms that this intense aversion to being a burden is often a physical stress response to an environment that penalized emotional demands. This is why you will exhaust yourself trying to figure out a complex problem alone before ever considering tapping the shoulder of the person next to you. This brings us to the crucial shadow side of this wiring. What happens when this constant invisibility starts quietly destroying your own health? The danger is that by fiercely attempting to never be a burden, you accidentally build a fortress of isolation around yourself, denying others the opportunity to care. You might find yourself in relationships where you do all the heavy lifting, unintentionally teaching people that your baseline is perfect, uncomplaining self-sufficiency. This leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy where you accelerate your own bitter burnout, quietly resenting the fact that no one ever steps in to help. You might also find yourself constantly acting as the ultimate shock absorber, turning your life into an arrangement where you are the silent barrier to reality. Because you project such an aura of low-maintenance competence, people naturally dump their emotional baggage on you, completely oblivious to your maxed-out capacity. When you never allow yourself to admit that the pressure is crushing you, you deny loved ones the opportunity to see your vulnerable humanity. If you automatically swallow every minor grievance because it feels necessary for keeping peace, your ingrained childhood fears are dictating your adult reality. True emotional resilience is not just about effortlessly absorbing systemic shocks alone. It is knowing how to safely let yourself be seen and supported. The goal is not to become completely dependent, but to build enough psychological flexibility to allow genuine vulnerability. Trusting your presence is wanted. So how do you navigate a world that requires connection when your mind and body naturally know the safety of remaining entirely self-contained? It starts with a vital cognitive distinction. While your intense self-reliance allowed you to survive a neglected childhood, it is currently keeping you emotionally starved. Acknowledge that your desire to simply be taken care of is entirely valid. If asking for a favor brings anxiety, recognize that fear as a ghost. You must also practice taking tiny, low-stakes risks with your visibility, explicitly allowing yourself to take up a little bit of space. Instead of waiting until you are completely overwhelmed by burnout to snap, try delegating one tiny task to someone else to witness their willingness to help. To counteract the physical resistance to needing people, intentionally observe what happens when you actually state a preference out loud rather than defaulting. Give yourself permission to inhabit a truly supported state. Again, a deeply restorative process that simply teaches your nervous system you are allowed to exist. A simple shift from constantly shrinking your needs to intentionally carving out protected visible space changes everything for an exhausted, fiercely independent Gen X mind. When the pressure to be the perfect invisible anchor is gently removed, the defensive armor dissolves and a surprising lightness can emerge in your life. You do not need to give up your incredible competence or fierce resilience. You just need a rhythm that allows safe mutual support. Maybe you are not overly proud or unable to connect by choosing to protect your peace while slowly learning to let people show up for you. Maybe your nervous system simply places a high value on genuine quiet strength rather than the frantic performative vulnerability demanded by society today. This intense awareness of the balance between self-reliance and connection makes you deeply empathetic, incredibly reliable, and a grounded anchor for others. You naturally understand how to recognize when someone else is silently struggling, offering a rare validating perspective in a world obsessed with loud complaints. You can be entirely self-sufficient while still recognizing your incredible ability to navigate a difficult world with grace, skill, and an unshakable sense of survival. Both can be completely true. You can be the most capable person in the room and still desperately crave a life that feels completely supported. If you recognize this feeling of being a profoundly tired latchkey kid, or if you love an exhausted Gen X adult, send this video to them. Let them know that you see how much they carry in silence and that their quiet ability to survive an empty world is beautiful but heavy.